Thank you. Greetings, everyone. This is Joel Meyer, and I'm dialing in here from Geneva, Switzerland. And on behalf of the amazing team at the Inspired Minds group out of London and the World Summit of AI and Intelligent Health, we want to thank you all for being here. We've got a truly astute grouping of colleagues that have joined us. We are all here to celebrate Earth Day and to discuss sustainability and the nexus of artificial intelligence and the SDGs. Again, we thank you all for taking time. Of course, during the COVID outbreak, we think there are many synergies for all of our life-saving work globally can all come together to help, again, save the planet, save lives. And with no further ado, I'd like to make a first round of introductions, and then we'll go through some initial questions. The cadence today for the hour that we'll all be together will be a half hour of questions from our astute panel, getting their background, and they will give some feedback on their views. Then we'll go over to questions from the field, from colleagues that are around the world that are part of the 50,000 or so experts that are part of the Inspired Minds family. Or of course, in Hawaii, we say ohana. My background is, again, my name is Joel Meyer with the Pacific Disaster Center, and we're an applied research center working towards the SDGs globally, based out of Hawaii. I'm here in Geneva. Again, we are so excited to have our colleagues, again, Julie Angus here, co-founder of Open Ocean Robotics, and her great work with not only voyaging and applied science. Carlos Sanchez, a climate change advisor, really with a background of industrial engineering, and managing the international CSR efforts for Philip Morris, bringing 18 years of experience. Again, and Dr. Karthik Mukaveli. Karthik, it's so good to see you. Karthik and I met at the World Summit of Artificial Intelligence this last fall, and he's going to speak to a lot of his great work at McGill and elsewhere, again, leading AI for Earth science. Dr. Micah Luiken, Micah, dialing in from Canada with your great work with the IEEE. It's really great to meet you. Again, your work is really foundational. I think we'll talk a lot about that idea of standards. And then when it comes to innovation, we can do no better than, again, Dr. George Mulamula. George, we met again in Amsterdam, and we were so impressed with all that you're doing with applied science, robotics, your work with the World Bank. With no further ado, what I'd like to do is start off with a question where then we'll go over to our colleagues. And in this case, they can then introduce themselves as we go across. The idea of climate change, we're here for Earth Day. And in terms of Earth Day, I'd like to ask you all, what are some of the best examples of how countries, communities, and companies around the world are using AI to engage in the idea of climate resilience, adaptation, and mitigation? Over to you, Julie, to start off and maybe give some background on your great work. Thank you, Julie.
Sure. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about my work and views on how AI can be used to help our planet be more sustainable. So my background is I have a graduate degree in molecular biology, but I've been focused on the ocean environment for quite some time now, previously doing expeditions on the ocean. So I've rowed across the Atlantic Ocean. I've spent lots of time in small boats, really have a good understanding about how vast the ocean is, how critical it is for our planet, and how little we know about it. Our oceans are still 80% unexplored, unmapped, unobserved, and we need to change that. But there are a lot of challenges with getting ocean data. So one way to overcome those challenges is to use autonomous vessels technologies. So that's what our company does, Open Ocean Robotics. We've developed a autonomous boat that's solar powered that can go out and collect ocean data for months at a time. So really enabling this persistent oceanographic and environmental data collection platform. So our belief is that by starting to collect this data and looking at ways we can use AI and machine learning to advance our understanding of the oceans, we can really impact a lot of the challenges we have from climate change, from pollution, from overfishing. So in terms of how companies and how the globe is embracing AI and how we can do that in the future, to encourage sustainability. I guess I look at it from the ocean perspective, and we are really seeing some great examples there. AI can be used for better monitoring and modeling the impacts of climate change so that we can look at mitigating some of those events. It can be used for extreme weather forecasting, once again helping to mitigate some of the impacts of climate change. A really profound role we see is in terms of monitoring ecosystems and populations. So in the ocean, getting a better idea of marine mammal populations, using the data collected, such as acoustics, to try and help identify and quantify marine mammal species. So there's a lot of great examples, but really I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more we can and will do.
Julie, what can I say? I think there's going to be a real fertile exchange here with our colleagues who are doing so many cool things that can dovetail from what you're doing. Thank you for that great overview. It's amazing what all of our colleagues are doing. Carlos, to your thoughts, that idea of, I know that CSR and kind of public-private partnerships, what are your thoughts on the role of technology as a force multiplier for addressing climate change and sustainability? Over to you.
So I don't know if you can still see me because I had some technical issues. Is it okay? Still working?
We can hear you. We can hear you. And
but you cannot see me.
Yeah, I think we lost the camera, but if you wanted to speak to some of your background, and then we'll work on getting the camera feedback. Carlos, thank you. And you're back.
Yes.
We see you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
So yes, my experience is in the area of corporate sustainability. So mainly my focus has been these years in implementing programs in multinationals to reduce carbon emissions, to work in energy efficiency and in renewable energy investments. So I'm an environmental manager for Philip Morris International, and I also work as climate change advisor, sharing my experience through social networks and my blog in carlossanchez.eco. So my view is about AI is, as you know, climate change is one of the major issues we are facing in terms of risks as a humanity. And climate change is caused by carbon emissions. And these carbon emissions has been proved that are produced by the fossil fuels that we are burning. So reduction of energy consumption and implementing more renewable energies are two key solutions for the drastic reduction in emissions that we need to produce in the next years if we want to avoid these catastrophic consequences. So what I would like to explain today is the examples that I've seen in the industry on how to reduce emissions by reducing energy consumption and also by incorporating renewable energy. So should I jump immediately into this topic, or we will do after the round?
I think we can do different rounds as we kind of go through. And again, Carlos, that is great. What can I say to have that overview and the fact that again you're reaching out to it's such a big network and so many different companies. I think that's fantastic, and I think that's what's going to be interesting when we go over to the academic side and the really heavy lifting again that Karthik is doing. Dr. Mukavelli, could you give a little background on your work with an idea of where you think AI can help with the SDGs and other things? Carlos, thank you for the entree to that, and Karthik, over to you.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, to give a bit of background, I started off in, well, initially in electrical and computer engineering, and I was involved in SLAM research as part of robotics, but I completely deviated, and I thought, climate change is one of the most important problems facing the planet at this point in time. So I ended up being a researcher as part of the Office of Chief Executive team within CSIRO in Australia. And while I was there, I was also doing my PhD focused on solar energy forecasting for the Australian energy market operator. And at that point, I think it was still kind of early days where we weren't seeing too much of an overlap between artificial intelligence and well, Earth system science in general, but even within the energy sector, there was a bit of things were still in silos, so to speak. But I noticed during the course of my PhD that, I joined the American Meteorological Society AI committee while I was on it, and I started noticing that some of the energy forecasting competitions that we were holding, the best performing work was coming from the field of machine learning. And this was at different timescales. So you could see at what timescales AI was outperforming versus others. And so, yeah, beyond my PhD, I decided, well, I should, to be at the state of the art within the broader Earth system science and energy field, I should deeply delve into artificial intelligence. And I had this amazing opportunity of working with a person who's now become the Turing laureate for deep learning. So I worked with Joshua Bengio and Mila, and before that, also Gregory Dudek. So I've had experience kind of with core AI researchers, people who are considered like the Nobel laureates of computer science, as well as the IPCC climate change Nobel laureate winning researchers too. So it's been really insightful to deeply delve into both fields. And currently, I'm leading a project at McGill called EnviroNet and other initiatives in AI for Earth science. And really, like, yeah, once I moved to McGill, it gave me a platform to bridge a lot of gaps within the community. And we're launching this AI for Earth Sciences workshop at ICLR 2020, which is happening in Africa. We wouldn't have ever imagined that you'd have such a focused workshop at a global AI conference, and also was involved in the Tackling Climate Change with Machine Learning white paper, which did a lot of rounds in both the press as well as people from both fields started to take notice. And yeah, involved in a whole bunch of other projects, recently starting to work on the exascale computing project with the US Department of Energy. And they have this Earth system modeling project and focusing on artificial intelligence applied to fundamental physical problems and aerosols as well as clouds. Yeah, that's
fantastic. Again, Dr. Mukavelli, amazing work. And again, we can dovetail to your remote sensing work on our discussions later in the WebEx. Again, Dr. Micah Luke, it's so great to have you here. And I think that idea from the standards side, could you give some background on your thoughts on that application of standards, computing, AI, and sustainability, especially from the IEEE perspective? Micah, thank you for joining.
Well, thank you very much, and happy 50th Earth Day, everybody.
Thank you.
Just 2 words on my background. I'm actually a physicist by training. I'm probably potentially the most senior person around the table in terms of age. I got first introduced to issues with the Club of Rome as a young teenager, so I have been involved and sort of primed for having an open eye to larger issues, global issues for a long time. And I've lived on 3 continents, so that's maybe quite helpful as well. So in the last 15 or so years, I've been involved on the sustainability side. And I've been very involved with IEEE as a volunteer. The sustainability side was professionally and as a volunteer. And so today, what I do is essentially try to look at how, as an organization, IEEE can contribute and can harness its resources to contribute to solutions to achieve the SDGs, to work on addressing issues of climate change. And one of the biggest contributions we have, of course, is all the volunteers and members who are working in various areas. So we have different initiatives like sustainable ICT or smart village and so on. And on the other hand, we have one pillar of our organization, which is a standards organization. So if we have complex systems like we are talking about when we're using IoT with AI, potentially blockchain, all in integrated systems, we need standards. And in particular, AI as being a new technology, it's a huge ground for setting standards. One of the pieces that IEEE is trying to bring to the table is to embed ethics at the front end of standards for AI, rather than as an afterthought. So I can give you a long list of standards, but maybe that's not really the right timing. But I can point to that, and that is the big world, and that's not just IEEE Canada. That's of course worldwide IEEE. Okay. You asked about what some companies and so on are doing, and I had a little bit of a look at where really the big huge impact could be. And the first one is not really companies. The first one is, if you really want to make a huge impact, is maybe AI for education.
Exactly.
Actually, personalized education, because I maintain as one of my bylines is essentially that education is a catalyst for sustainability. And if we can make education better and more accessible, then I think that's huge. Somebody mentioned energy. So of course, for climate change, using energy efficiently is huge. And if we look at systems and we can use AI to optimally operate grid systems, that would be great. So that's where we can maybe make big changes in the developed as well as in the developing world. And looking at another application area is precision agriculture. Not every square centimeter or square meter of ground needs the same amount of water, the same amount of fertilizer, is ready to harvest at the same time. So all of these are very complex systems in terms of sensors and control, and need decision making along the way, so that they are really big grounds for artificial intelligence and machine learning.
That is I think I speak for our panel. That is such a great overview of the possibilities. I'm going to remind our colleagues who have dialed in globally that you can be putting in your questions to our esteemed colleagues in the application that's on your desktop or on your phone. So if you can start submitting questions, in about 15 minutes, we're going to start fielding those. Now, with that in mind, the questions are coming in. We can see them coming in. I want to, again, go over to Dr. George Mulamula. George, here's a specific question for you. And laying that groundwork from our colleagues and talking about regional capacity building, what do you think from a macroeconomic and development point of view, which you bring such a great background on the World Bank and other multilateral entities? What are some of the opportunities for emerging markets to harness AI, leapfrog in terms of development, and this idea of building digital infrastructure? George, over to you, and thank you for joining.
So thank you very much, and happy 50th again, Earth Day. Let me start by saying that there's Klaus Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum, said in 2016, "We stand on the brink of a technological revolution that will fundamentally alter the way we live, work, and relate to one another." He was talking about AI. But now I think COVID-19 has surpassed AI. So this impact that we have makes us rethink how we use AI. I say that from the perspective of the background where I'm in the East African region. And I look at entrepreneurship, innovations, and using digital tools and digital infrastructure to help the economic development of our countries and also try and attain the SDGs. As an example, for example, AI will play a great role. Not the usual AI that we find in the West. That will never work here because of the rules of engagement that is required for ML to function will never function here in our part of the world, the way we do things in our part of the world. But having stated that, but AI is still crucial. As an example, right now we have COVID-19 in Tanzania. The past week, it's been flooding, raining cats and dogs and flooding the area. And in the valleys and the waterways that come to the city, houses have been broken down because of the waterway flooding into the housing. And so what we've been trying to do with AI is having drones that will fly and then take pictures of the valleys that where we have the flooding and where we have the mudslides, and then trying to take the pictures and write an algorithm that using ML to try and see how can we mitigate such kind of flooding? How can we set up to say in the future, this is what we need to do? This is just a simple example in terms of using AI to try and help the social well-being of our people, protect our people from the flooding that is there. So AI is crucial in doing that. I mean, we have used AI, for example, in agriculture also, but we'll talk about that later. Right now, let me just end by saying that AI can be used in our world, but then using AI for driverless cars will not work here. But using AI in terms of mitigating hazards that we have, it definitely will be a great boost to the development of our society here.
Again, Dr. Mulamula, thank you so much. Your work, and that is so appropriate. We at the PDC were just in Indonesia a few months ago when the flooding was hitting, and our work, we work with We Robotics and a lot of colleagues. Thank you for that intervention. As we circle around, we're going to do a couple more questions that we had to start, and then we'll go into the questions from our colleagues. Carlos, you bring such a great background on that public-private side messaging. What do you think for how can businesses transform their models and embrace the shift to a low carbon, sustainable future? Carlos, over to you.
So yes, every time we talk about the move to a low carbon economy, we are tended to go into the renewables, to the electric vehicles. But we forget to think that the most sustainable energy is the energy we don't use. So that's why I believe that these days energy efficiency is something that is not sexy. You don't see big commitments of companies improving the energy efficiency. But I see AI a very important tool in the future for step change the energy efficiency we have in factories and in buildings. So what has been the challenges that we have faced so far in energy efficiency? What I have seen is that for energy efficiency to improve, like we do every year, 2-3%, this is usually what we have. It's either because we have new technology coming, or because of the knowledge that we have in the expertise that we have in our companies. So the problem is that if we want to have a step change and we don't have time to be just at 2-3%, then we need to find something new. Also, I see that the equipment that is run and in the buildings where I've been, that you have smart controls, sometimes are managed by outsourced companies that over time are not getting the knowledge that they used to have. So what I believe is AI could be the tool that will be able to provide hints for those people to improve the energy efficiency, provide trends, and also to utilize the equipment that we have already. It's not about coming with new factories, new buildings that are absolutely automatic and using artificial intelligence, but retrofitting our existing brownfields with a technology that provides this improvement in energy efficiency by looking at the data. I read the other day an article that says 70% of the data we are using in companies from energy meters or from any other energy enterprise resource management tools are not used ever. So I believe that using machine learning and in our companies, we will be able to step up in energy efficiency and bring it back into something that everybody should be having targets to reduce the impact in climate change.
Carlos, thank you so much. And again, that idea, and again, I'm from Los Angeles, we have so many existing buildings, and the idea of even though people want to build a green building, it takes a lot more energy to build that building. And so that idea of using what you have and being flexible and nimble, we really appreciate that you come again from that corporate CSR side, the heavy lifting that can be done from water sanitation as we're all encountering COVID globally. I think there's a lot that we can all learn. We'll dovetail for the next few minutes on a thought of, we talk about AI, we want AI for good, AI for the earth, but we're going to have to ensure privacy and safety. We've got a lot of technical expertise on this panel. For a couple minutes, again, I thought we could loop back. Julie, I wanted to get your take on kind of that balancing of privacy and data and have, I'm in the GIS business. We want open data, which is a big thing, of course, that PDC does with OpenStreetMap and the UN, but we always want to ensure privacy. Julie, what are your thoughts? And then we can go over to Dr. Lucan for her thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, privacy and ensuring that the data is secure is very important for any kind of data collection. I know for our vessels, a lot of it depends on the application and the end use. So if you're collecting data for research, it's really valuable in many cases for it to be shareable, so it can be used for collaborations. However, if it's industry or defense collecting that data, then there's more restrictions on it and you can't have those parameters. So I think no matter what application you are collecting data for AI, you need to have that security in place and be able to deal with it appropriately.
Again, Julie, thank you so much. And it must be so interesting when you're dealing in those austere environments. That's a perfect segue to why standards matter. I'm here in Geneva and the World Meteorological Organization's right here, ITU, and doing great work collaborating with Inspired Minds and our colleagues. As we segue over, I think that'd be great to get some feedback. Again, Dr. Luke and Micah, what are your thoughts from kind of a standards-based effort? We know the IEEE is global in the age of GDPR. It'd be great to get your perspective. Over to you.
Well, of course, standards are hugely important because that allows us to work together. That allows us to build regulation, and it allows us to and has feedback into data governance because we're just talking about data. So I think there's a lot of work that has to be done in the next few years, because if you look at different countries, we are by far not at any stage of having good policy for data governance. And it will differ from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. But underneath it, we need standards for cybersecurity. We need standards for privacy. We need to build privacy engineering into the engineering curriculum for people to actually have an understanding of what privacy actually means, can mean, must mean. We need to look at privacy with respect to children's data versus adults' data versus conditions like, whereas I probably am not particularly interested in knowing, letting everybody in the world know where I am currently while I'm in the middle of quote unquote civil society. But if I end up going in the Arctic or somewhere in a huge natural park, I probably want people to know where I am in case I have an accident and need help. Okay, so privacy is also circumstantial to a certain extent. It's a balance between what I need people to know about me or a group of people in order to be able to be helpful versus an absolute value of privacy. So I think there's a lot of work that has to be done in the standards development, and IEEE is definitely trying to lead on the ethics side as it applies to AI and machine learning.
That is, again, Dr. Luke, thank you. And you weighed in on so many important aspects there. And I think when you talk about children and the contextual nature of data and what is open data and what is the normative nature of what is good, and it's and technology as a resource, but also a force for control as well, and AI being very powerful. We know that the UN weighs in on that. We know that the IEEE and OASIS and other data organizations are so helpful. Thank you for that intervention. I think this is something to segue over. We're now at the halfway mark, and again, to our colleagues that have dialed in from all over the world, we have hundreds of colleagues who are listening in. You're sending in your questions. We appreciate that. This kind of astute panel, a lot of it is about the capacity building and building that pipeline. And I go to Micah, you spoke to that. We are also fortunate to do what you do and do what you're passionate about. I think a lot of our colleagues want to kind of understand, how do you get there? And we have a question come in for Dr. Mukaveli Karthik. This question about, in what discipline are you doing your PhD? And then I think I'll go around to the group broadly. We've got a colleague who's also coming in saying, who's studying data science in Italy and would like to know what he or she can do in terms of this applying all this great data science knowledge. So Karthik, over to you, and then we can go around to the group for their thoughts. Thank you all.
Yeah, sure. I finished my PhD a few years ago, but I mean, generally, the area that I focused on was energy forecasting. So that's one particular area which I would say, because of the work on smart grids and that particular field, the amount of data capture which has happened has made it slightly more ripe to leverage artificial intelligence than perhaps some of the other fields. But it's not to say that artificial intelligence can't be applied to. It's hard to imagine a certain field where it doesn't actually apply. Any field which has sufficiently good labeled data sets, and you have model which can be improved as a result of such a statistical analysis on such data sets, you can apply AI to it. So that's the question of where can we apply AI, but where is AI actually useful? So for instance, what we're observing in, at least in earth sciences field, is that in situations where you have a good understanding of the physical science theory, so for instance, the Navier-Stokes equations, right? Like that's a fundamental science, a fundamental scientific aspect of like the earth science system, but it has a very good theory around it. And artificial intelligence, for it to be able to leverage it, in fact, some of the physical science principles can feed into AI and inform how artificial intelligence itself is developed. But say in other fields, like we're facing the COVID pandemic right now, and in a way, a lot of the work should have probably been done like a few years ago for AI to be actually impactful. So we're actually playing catch up within this space. So while AI can now, you can see that you can develop segmentation models of like chest X-rays, and you can have perhaps mental health sort of apps where privacy is again a bit of an issue, and data collection isn't something which is easily possible within the Earth field, right? Like it's only recently where we have such vast data sets from satellite remote sensing and the commercialization of space generally. Before this, we were working on like climatologies, right? That's like monthly observations as opposed to what you need for AI, which is like super high resolution relatively. So it's a question of where should you apply AI as opposed to where can it, what are all the fields, and whether a field is ready or not.
Again, Karthik, that is such a it's great to show from whence you came in your academic studies and how you applied that. Maybe we can go around the room and maybe kind of, answer that as well. Again, Dr. George Mullamulam, George, your thoughts on your training and then how you went on to apply that. How is your professional path, and what can some of our students online learn from that? Over to you.
In fact, my my introduction to AI started when I was studying my postgraduate PhD program in New York on robotics. But then I moved over into policy later on, and then I thought I should come back home to try and see how I can help development of the country. And in the time since I've been back, of course, I've worked in WIPO in Geneva, worked in ITU, in other FDB, and I'm with the World Bank. But I see AI applications being used to address the challenges faced by our people in the region. And if we tackle let's say, those are the bottom of the pyramid, then we help reach the SDGs. In doing so, then, we look at AI being demand-driven to solve those issues that are there. Now, in doing so, then AI becomes a service solution to those challenges that we have. We talked about COVID-19. Can AI, of course, I like to use digital tools. And the major tool that I currently use is a drone. But then, as we look at these issues, the issue comes in to say, we need to have the policy and an enabling system that allows us to use these tools so that we have privacy, we have ethics, and all those things that surround the usage of these tools in a safe and secure manner, while protecting each individual's right, or each person's right, or whether it be the institution or an individual person. So the AI, the way I see it happening, then becomes a tool that provides a service that will help develop the people that we have in my region. And the different ways of looking at AI, if you harness it with the data, in our part of the world, we leapfrog the use of mobile telephony and the collection that you get in that data. How can you get that data, harness it, and use it for health, for climate, for the well-being in terms of mobility? How do you know, while protecting each individual users?
Again, George, thank you for that overview of, again, that regional perspective, that idea of the capacity building side of it, but that the unique characteristics, and again, with your background across so many multilateral organizations, we really appreciate your perspective. And this is a good time to segue as we're taking more feedback from our colleagues in the field globally, giving us their thoughts from students to experts that have dialed in. Again, on behalf of Inspired Minds and the World Summit of AI, we also want you to take a look again at T-30.ai, a really unique initiative that is building a global coterie of experts that could really get this idea that we need to really move the needle over the next 5 years, 10 years, 30 years. And this is the idea that, you know, T-30 is an amazing initiative, and we want everyone on this panel who, again, are brilliant and powerful and doing such good things, and all of your friends, and please build this community. And again, I have to interject our Hawaiian Ohana thing, that we are building this family, and together we really can change the world. This is Earth Day should not just be one day a year. I think we all know that public health matters every day of the year, and we're all coming together in that way. And public health is intimately linked to environmental health. So with that in mind, again, T-30.ai. Here's a thought too. We've got some great questions coming in, and it's kind of this teeter-totter of good science and innovation, but also making money. We want to have enterprise. We know we're seeing amazing companies help with the COVID response, from our friends at Salesforce to our friends at Direct Relief. Yesterday was an amazing WebEx with Andrew Schroeder, our colleague, and a lot of friends from Facebook and other folks that are using AI and big data to help meet those challenges. With that in mind, Julie, over to your thoughts on that idea of, as you're doing cool things with technology and startups, but also with your background in academia and adventures around the world, what are your thoughts on that balancing act between innovation, academia, and creating companies and creating jobs? Over to you.
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. Whenever we, are creating a company, you want to, of course, create something that will have an impact on the world, that will make it more sustainable, that will allow us to embrace innovations. But at the same time, you have to be customer driven. You have to know what your customer needs. And, there's so much data available. You need to really be able to target exactly what those solutions are, what the, actionable insights they need to make their processes run more efficiently, to allow them to earn money. You have to bring a strong value proposition to the table. And that can definitely be challenging in, many industries, where you're starting perhaps with a product and you're looking for that fit for it. So I know for us, that's certainly a challenge that we've dealt with. We started by creating an autonomous boat that can act as a data collection platform, but who is going to benefit from that data? And yes, it does have huge impacts in terms of helping us understand our oceans better, but often to drive an entrepreneurial company, especially a startup, you need to have a direct link to an industry partner, partner, somebody who can give you immediate feedback, who has shorter sales cycles. So it's finding those partners, helping those, and having those partners help guide your technology development. So for us, it's definitely looking at some of the industries operating in the ocean environment. The ocean industry itself is a $2.5 trillion industry. So a lot of things matter on the ocean. 90% of our goods are shipped on the ocean. We have offshore wind starting to really make a big impact. You have, different kinds of seaweed farming, aquaculture, etc. So looking at ways to help those industries be more sustainable, to operate more safely, has been a big focus for us.
That is amazing. Thank you for that overview. And to give that perspective, we keep talking regional, but that idea, of course, the majority of the Earth is water. And then on Earth Day, and the idea that I would think as a company too, that you can really see that as an ecosystem, no pun intended, both financially and literally, that you can really have a delta and change things. And I appreciate that intervention. And to the more terrestrial pursuits, Carlos, your thoughts on that balancing act of CSR, and also, but it does take often the largesse of big companies to do big things when it comes to, we work with a lot of the Rockefeller Foundation, could be the Ford Foundation, the Gates Foundation. They've all done great things. And as a partner with innovative companies, again, like Ocean Open Robotics, I know We Robotics works with Rockefeller and other folks. Carlos, over to your thoughts. You've got such a good perspective in this space. Thank you so much.
Yeah, look, I can explain you how I see the perspective. So what I see is that not only AI, but the rest of the industrial 4.0 revolution is going at a very slow pace. So we have virtual reality systems, 3D printing, you name it. And it's going really slow versus what it was expected. So it was a hype, and now I think we are coming more to the reality. So I see that one of the biggest challenges in the company culture that still don't see AI as something important. It's something like nice to have, and that hasn't been the main strategy. The same that digitalization. You have seen all these memes these days that COVID has made digitalization the priority of companies, something that no CIO has done in the past. So I believe we need something to make this accelerate. So let's see, maybe these recovery packages and the incentives from states that want to go into the direction of low carbon economy might force companies to implement AI in the companies. I see other areas. So for example, lack of proper data. Every time I've been in a pilot, the data we have is very abundant, but the quality is bad. So whenever you're running a machine learning algorithm, then you end up with nothing. So you need to understand your problem first, and also make sure that the data is quality. And the last one is the lack of skilled people. So for this, for corporates, what I see is two areas. One is to take amazing people that are coming out of university, PhD, and bring them in the company and try to build teams that are composed of experts and also data scientists. This can take some time. And the other one is to partner with startups that are amazing in the world, because it's not only Google, Microsoft, or DeepMind that are doing amazing things. So you have companies that have known, like Pepit, a company in Belgium that is quite advanced in artificial intelligence in the industry, or Otego, they are building future scenarios for energy. So this is the way that I believe that should be coming, an acceleration on the implementation of AI.
Carlos, it was so great to get that. Really, thank you for hitting all of those pieces of the puzzle. You touched on capacity building. We at the Pacific Disaster Center, we have a fleet of data scientists globally. We work with AI providers, Facebook AI for Good. We obviously work with Amazon, NASA. We've had NASA staff there just a month ago. And we have a great internship program. I always make a pitch for that. If you want to come to Maui and be an intern, you're coming out of grad school. We know we're so lucky also to work with Pulse Lab Jakarta. A lot of the AI practitioners at the UN. Again, Javier Turan and his team doing stuff in Delft and here in Geneva. It's so great to learn from, and we were saying to those that dialed into the call that we're going to all collaborate further after this, because we've got such a good team here. And with that in mind, there was a question that was over to Karthik, this idea of ecosystems, business ecosystems. Somebody has asked on our questions in our chat here, any startup ideas from your great background in applying AI to these different challenges? Here's somebody out there that would like to, and I think that we'll go around the room and also get people's feedback on now both business ideas and also use cases of AI for Earth. So I guess we'll start and walk the line here. Karthik, over to you for your thoughts.
Yeah, so I actually have my foot not just in academia, but also in the startup world. So I advise about 3 different startup companies, and I myself am in the process of launching 2 startups. So one of the startups was part of the Creative Destruction lab program in Canada. So CDL was one of the very first AI incubators in the world, and our startup, the focus of our startup was to build planetary climate intelligence, focusing on extreme catastrophic climate change, and to provide such analytics to across 4 verticals, well, the energy sector, the financial sector, the agricultural sector, and just broadly to touch on, I think I mentioned financial sector, so financial sector too. So you can imagine, extreme event prediction, there's an issue with the current climate models in that you can't get to high resolution forecasting to provide sort of personalized analytics. So I think George mentioned flood forecasting. That's something we're actively working on. And there are teams within, it's more on the fringe of certain massive corporates. Like they would have a certain research budget allocated to play around with AI applied to threats. For instance, like Google has an entire crisis response team and it's using machine learning to develop flood forecasting. Likewise, there's a bunch of new startups coming up. So this space is super active. The other startup I'm involved in is still like we're working on the MVP part, but the goal is around improving mental health with artificial intelligence. But my specific background adds in here because like right now in COVID, everyone's kind of isolated home, right? So what kind of insight can we get from people's like geolocation and how they move around, or whether and how that would perhaps contribute to their stress levels or their lack of movement within a certain location. So those are two examples. There's a bunch of other, there's a lot of work happening within satellite remote sensing and bridging that with artificial intelligence. People have tried, building startups with drones. Climate cooperation, people tend to forget, like before it was acquired by Monsanto, was perhaps one of the very first AI startups tackling climate change, which really, I think the valuation was like $1 billion or something. So this space is getting more and more active. A lot of companies are taking interest. Yeah.
Again, Karthik, that is such a, well, first of all, congratulations. And those companies are very lucky to have you involved. Your background and how you're able to weave that together. I come from a satellite mapping and other background, and it's such an exciting time. I always say that to those that are dialing. A lot of colleagues are experienced that are dialing, and those that are studying, that are texting in on the chat. This is the best time to get involved with AI and satellites and again, robots that are in the ocean environment and agricultural endeavors. And again, and the CSR side of bringing AI and data privacy to the corporate world to make sure you have that balancing act. We've got chief ethics officers. I work with a lot of CIO level colleagues in the humanitarian space. This is a good segue again over to Micah. Dr. Lucan, your thoughts at that nexus of privacy, answering the question that we had before. If you see any interesting ideas that you would be not only just a startup, but a use case where you're like, this would be a great use case, AI for Earth, but balancing that with your thoughts on, I know, privacy and standards and how that. So a two-part question. Again, Micah, over to you.
Okay, so I was thinking actually along a little bit of a different line here. I really appreciate George's service as a tool. And so people were asking, what to study, what to do, where to use it. So I would like to come from the point of view of where are we actually sitting with problems where we could do an awful lot better. And we could do an awful lot better with managing and modeling water systems, for example. So if we look at different geographical locations and look at water contracts, some people have been suggesting to use blockchain for the contracts, using the climate data, et cetera, to then model forward and forecast the water availability and essentially make decisions on the distribution of water. So I think there is a system where you use a very significant data fusion, very significant different sources of data, and like from the human connection of the contract to the or business to business connection of the contract to climate data, and integrate it to do modeling and planning and decision making. Another thing that I think where we really need to work on is certainly in the developing world, we have been doing resource planning like on a city level or so, often in terms of silos, One silo looks at waste management, one silo looks at water provision, one looks at wastewater, one looks at energy and transport and so on. So now that we have the tools to handle, like we always have had a lot of data. We're getting magnitudes more data now with IoT, and we have the tools to handle the data, to fuse the data, to use machine learning, and to make decisions. So I think the time really has come for integrated planning, integrated modeling and planning of systems of systems. And that's a driver for using AI as a service. And of course, with the data comes the privacy concerns. But so we have essentially different tools involved. Like we talked about drones, we talked about, like I mentioned, blockchain, we looked at IoT. So we are bringing all of this together with the communications infrastructure, of course, the cybersecurity requirements, and pull it together with AI to handle the data, to deliver the knowledge and the decisions safely.
That is, I'm really excited. I think that's really, it's such a good, and I really appreciate the panel for weaving together all of your collective experience. And as you, again, Dr. Luca, when you speak about the idea of water as a shared resource, but making sure that data and privacy concerns from an urban environment to an ocean environment to a developed or lesser developed environment, that I don't think there could be anything that's more important. Water sanitation is the hallmark of the COVID response. So here in Geneva, let's be frank, every actor around here is involved with that. So I think you really touched on that. Again, as we go over to George's good work, and Dr. Mulamula, your thought on both that teeter-totter of data privacy, but some of the, I will just say, I'll use my California word, some cool ideas that you see as use cases for across that panoply of amazing technology that you see at the African Drone Forum, or maybe something new that you think somebody who's on our call might say, hey, this is a new idea that I want to pursue. George, over to you.
Yeah, just to echo what Dr. Lucan said, but before I say that, let me just point out something. There are constraints in using AI solutions in our part of the world, and just to mention one or two, lack of developed digital economy that supports an entrepreneurial ecosystem, which drives innovation in the country, or the lack of AI expertise, and sometimes the government not really understanding how AI could be utilized and how you can link it to the demand-driven solutions that you could use AI as a service. So, having stated that, one of the things I did before I joined the World Bank was I created the largest tech incubator in the East African region. And one of the things I used to tell my incubatees as I mentored and coached them was to say that where you have a problem, it's an opportunity. Having stated that now, so we managed with the World Bank, what we did was manage to speak to the government of Zanzibar and to say, why don't you create an innovation hub that is linked? This is what I'm linking to Dr. Lucan. Instead of working in silos, the environmental department working on its own, the sanitation working on its own, the water area working on its own, energy working on its own, let the innovation hub be a center that supports the activities and the agenda of the government in terms of economic development and attaining the SDGs. Let's look at the pain points that there are within the government, and then let's try and start solving these issues using, and AI then becomes a service or a tool that goes to solve some of the issues that we have. So we're in the process of setting it up, and they've created what is called the Zero Hub, which I think should be it was supposed to start in the next couple of months, but with the COVID-19, everything has been postponed. Now, and this is a pilot whereby now we want to see how can you utilize those differences. And here we're looking at AI solving the coastal issues of water coming in, the rise in the water that comes in into the shoreline. How do the mangroves how can we look at them and see how can we support them by taking the aerial pictures and have the catastrophe that goes look and see do the algorithm. But in the meantime, also looking at issues of health. How do you mitigate malaria, for example? Because the healthy population is very important for the development of the economy. So these are the use cases that we're putting together to see how can we move on. Now, we are lacking AI experts and data scientists that are there. So you're all welcome to see how we can work together to try and see how we can help the development of these economies of the country in order to fast track or get better services to our people.
Again, Dr. Mulamula, George, that is such a great overarching view of, as you said, we already extended the invitation to come to Maui. I think we'd all love to come to East Africa to help out. In the time that we're all working now on WebExes, I kind of think in some ways even this basic technology could allow for less barrier of entry. Nobody needs to get on more flights. I know for our folks dialing in, we want to work with this growing community, this large global community that Inspired Minds has built. But for everyone on the call, I think there's a lot of cross-pollination. We have time for, I think I'll dovetail over to Julie. Julie, to get your thoughts on it. Sounds like there's a lot of cross-pollination there in terms of robotics and aquatic environments and water quality. What are your thoughts? And then we'll go around for some closing statements. Over to you, Julie.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of opportunity in the ocean and the water environment. I think we've touched upon so many great areas where there is huge potential for AI to make improvements, whether it's education, transportation, energy management. So for people deciding what area they want to focus on, I think much of it can be their passion, what they really care about, and that will drive them to succeed. So, and I think this will continuously change as technology develops, as we incorporate AI more into different elements of our society. New opportunities will present themselves, and nobody's career is linear. We've all taken so many twists and turns, and I would have never imagined where I am today when I was graduating from university. So I think one of the most important things is to pursue your passions and find a place where your knowledge, your expertise will really make a difference, because there are many areas where that's true.
Again, I think I echo what all the panelists say. And Julie, to all of your great adventures across rowing boats, literally across oceans, on behalf of the Inspired Minds team, which again is a team that has brought us all together, we've mentioned T-30.ai. We'd like everyone to please join as an expert. So everyone, we've got an action item there. We want those who've dialed in to investigate all these amazing drone efforts, again, in Tanzania and in Africa with the World Bank. George, thank you for your time. For IEEE, again, Dr. Lucan, we know that is the foundation of what we do globally. Karthik, it's so great to hear from the academic side to the startup side. Again, and Carlos, greatly looking forward to seeing all of your next steps, because there's so many companies that can scale better with your advice. And again, Julie, thank you for your thoughts on that. And I do think, again, I think George's words of, there's a lot of problems out there, but I think we all see opportunities. And on behalf of the Inspired Minds team, can you please, drop a note to Stella, one of our coordinators, who's helping. There's a lot of machinery behind her running this great WebEx to the Ohana there in London and globally. You can email Stella at worldsummit.ai. If you want to get involved and collaborate, there are a lot of questions. We can capture those. Please follow, again, Inspired Minds, Intelligent Health, and the World Summit on Twitter. And with that in mind, we have come down. We've come down kind of the end of our time. We'd like you to all use Twitter and use LinkedIn and use these ways to communicate. Any closing remarks for our colleagues, and then we'll close out the WebEx. Over to you.
Yeah, so
thank you.
My thoughts were that, with COVID now and previously us going through the global financial crisis, we've been through two major crises. The next crisis could be like a tipping point as far as climate change is concerned, right? So we know exactly how the world looks like, where in the case of GFC, where like a fundamental, with the subprime mortgage crisis, fundamental assets, they weren't as valuable as they were. So In the case of a climate change tipping point crisis, it could be the case that the underlying fossil fuel assets might not be worth what they're actually valued at the moment. So think of a new world which we can transform using the tools that we have of artificial intelligence and all the great work which is happening in the Earth system science field to build a future which is resilient as far as tackling major global problems is concerned.
I think that sounds great. And unfortunately, I'm getting updated. We have come to the top of the hour. I'm going to ask all of our colleagues again to just continue the conversation. And on behalf of Inspired Minds, to our colleagues who've dialed in from all over the world, I want to thank you and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Merci beaucoup. Thank you.
Merci. Au revoir.
Bye, everyone.
Happy Earth Day. Au revoir.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Thank you, everyone.
And keep safe.
Thank you. Everyone, stay safe. Thank you.